really every 100 times a human being touches a person, touches anything, he or she makes a mistake. So we need to get away from that 2 sigma level of human fallibility to the 6 sigma level of fallibility that only comes with teamwork, leveling hierarchy, culture, and systems. I own a number of restaurants, and that is really fun because it helps me think, as you say, about how businesses do things well. One of the restaurants was the 4th highest grossing restaurant in New York City.
How many surgeons are we going to have where they were your first surgery you ever saw? I'm trying to understand. You keep saying this, so.
Welcome back to another episode of Back Talk. On this episode, I am thrilled to introduce our guest, Dr. Michael Vitale. He is the Chief of Pediatric Spine and Scoliosis Surgery at Columbia University in New York City. I've known Dr. Vitale a long time, actually going on 11 years this summer, so we're really, really excited to have him on the show today. Dr. Vitale, welcome to Back Talk.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, Eric. I'm really excited to join you today.
So we're really excited to have you. We have a lot of questions for you. We've known each other a long time. Yeah. But first question we want to kick off with right away is just tell us a little bit about your background, how you ended up in orthopedics and spine, what your pathway was to get there. People love to hear those stories and understand, how you got there in your career.
Yeah, I look back on it, and without question, my father was the really formative influence. He was the only person who left this small fishing village in Sicily, went to the University of Padua, and then felt compelled to get on a plane and go across the world, knowing almost no one, speaking almost no English, to repeat his residency in orthopedic surgery. He met my mother, was drafted into the Vietnam War at the time, and practiced orthopedics as the chief of Lutheran Medical Center for about 40 years until about 80 years of age. So my dad was, without question, the foundational influence on my career, although for a long time I felt like the last thing I was going to do really was to be an orthopedic surgeon and follow his footsteps. Interestingly enough, my brother's an orthopedic surgeon as well.
I've known you forever. I did not know that story. Yeah. That's incredible.
Yeah,
That's great.
Yeah. And I got to do a lot of stuff with my dad. My dad, brother, and I went to Haiti several times after the earthquake and operated on kids and people with hand problems and adults. And so we had a lot of richness together, and I feel really fortunate about that.
Do you still have a lot of family back in Italy?
Yeah, my whole family's in Sicily. So a couple times, once a year we get together. We do a Congresso Familia Vitale. And it's like 40 or 50 relatives that get together. So it's great. I love going back there.
Amazing. That's fantastic. Yeah. Okay, so you went into kind of follow your father's footsteps. And then what about the emphasis on peds? Did you always know that would be part of your career path?
Yeah, I had an interesting pathway. I really thought I was going to be an MD, PhD in neuroscience and applied to programs and was admitted because I really liked the basic science of sort of brain stuff. But when I got to what I was really going to do, I recognized that I had too much of a need for fixing things quickly. Mm-hmm. And it was just not going to meet my personality to spend a lot of time in a lab and, have to spend a career to sort of make some progress. And I so much recognize how important those people are, but it made me recognize that I really was going to be a surgeon. And over time, I recognized I was going to be a surgeon in a pediatric subspecialty, and then pediatric orthopedics, and then pediatric spine became sort of the place where I was. And it's amazing. I think that was 30 years ago, but it was.
Time goes fast. It's amazing. I'm curious, when you were doing that, was there any interesting research that you were in the lab doing, and the research itself was interesting, but you realized you wanted to go and get on the surgical side?
Yeah, my research really focused on developmental interactions in the developing rat brain and opioid pathways, and it was really interesting. I thought I was going to be someone who got really into the biochemistry of memory, actually, and I'm sort of fortunate that I understood early enough that that wasn't really for me, because honestly, I feel so incredibly fortunate and privileged to get to do what I get to do right now. So it all works out.
One of the very first surgeries I observed was in your OR.
Oh, is that right? I don't remember that, Rebecca.
Yeah, 11 years ago. I was brand new into the spine industry,
Funny.
and I came to New York. I spent time with you and Hanjo, and I remember you were kind of talking to me about just the same thing, just how privileged you feel to be able to kind of treat these kids. And I actually met the mother of the child you operated on, and I was with you when you talked to her about the surgery, and it was very, very impactful. I remember it all these years later. It really is amazing work that you guys are able to do, and it's just a special patient population.
Yeah, I think we're really lucky. You think about it, we develop these long relationships with families over time. Some of these kids are fragile. Many of them have diseases at an early age, and you are a companion to that family, to that kid through their journey. I mean, just this morning I was texting with a 23-year-old patient of mine with spinal muscular atrophy. I operated on her first when she was 6, and then a number of other times after that. She ended up being valedictorian at Yale.
Wow.
She married a kid from Princeton, and I went to the wedding last summer.
That's
And
amazing.
Oh, wow.
those type of things are just hard to really articulate how powerful an influence they are in my life, and what I get to do. I really don't take it for granted at all.
It's fantastic. Shifting gears a little bit, you're also very passionate about safety in spine. And so tell us a little bit about this conference that you run every year and how you got so passionate about that topic.
Yeah, well, going back to sort of history, I knew I wanted to do something more scalable than only operating on, 3,000 or 4,000 kids throughout my career. So I got an MPH along the way early on when outcomes research was really important. And that has been incredibly important to me to allow me to develop teams, and I still do lots and lots of clinical research. One of the highlights of my career is leading the Pediatric Spine Foundation, the Pediatric Spine Study Group, which is the largest spine registry in the world, 292 surgeons, and we get to do lots of things. If you look at the amount of change that's happened over my 20-something year career in the area of pediatric spine, it's staggering. Many of the treatments that we have available now, the tether is a great example, magnetically controlled growing rods, pediatric pedicle screw indications, and even a lot of the basic blocking and tackling of deformity correction. None of those things really were what they are today, way back when. So for me, it was always obvious that I had an obligation to try to drive the field forward. Along the way, really because of a complication that I had, I started to realize that obligation needs to extend to making spine surgery safer, not just in my OR, but in everyone's ORs. So I started having meetings called Complications in Spine Surgery. And early on, and this was 15 years ago, we got a bunch of people together in a room, and it was sort of like a sharing of dirty laundry. Some senior surgeons would cry when they spoke about some bad things that happened. And at the same time, the science of safety was really evolving. And it became obvious that we should be applying some of the same principles that are used in industry, in aviation and maritime, where the journey is further along. If you look at really anything, nuclear disasters at sea or friendly fire disasters in the military, there was a period where there was way too much avoidable harm, and they examined the black box and they paid attention to systems and they used those things to stop those things from happening. Our nuclear subs are largely run by high school students, and there hasn't been a problem on our nuclear fleet in like 45 years because of systems that are in place. So we launched the project for safety in spine surgery about 14 years ago, and I didn't really anticipate the amount of thirst for this type of information. We just totally revamped our website, the Project for Safety in Spine Surgery, and there's been a ridiculous amount of traffic on the website already. Our 10th annual Summit for Safety in Spine Surgery is May 30th in New York City. For 9 out of 10 times, it's oversold. So we have an overflow room. And I think that not only has it been fun and a passion of mine, but I think it's also a sacred obligation if we do what we are doing, which is trying to fix other human beings with our hands and recognizing that we're human, right? We make mistakes. We make mistakes of judgment. We make mistakes of execution. We need to rely on a broader format, a broader set of tools than just how I'm performing that day. I think a lot about this. I'm just finishing a book called Sharpening Your Scalpel, which is all about how to get better, not only in surgery, but sort of in life. And I think that teamwork, relying on a systems approach, and learning from the lessons of others are really key. So that's what the Project for Safety in Spine Surgery is all about.
A lot to unpack there. You just went through a lot. It's really interesting. You know, we, as an industry, have watched that meeting grow over the last 10 years. We were on a panel.
I was just going to bring
right?
that up. Yeah. So actually, that was the very first time I met you. This was many years ago.
right.
And we were on a panel together with a bunch of other leaders in spine. I think Dr. Lenke facilitated it, but yeah, it was great. You're right. It was a long time ago.
It was.
2018.
Yeah, it's been really cool seeing that thing grow, and it's been fun. And you know, one of the things that I see happening is that we have all of these tools. What I mean is checklists. We've developed a checklist for 10 years in a row. Checklists on decreasing spine infection, decreasing neurological harm, decreasing wrong site surgery, safe practices in robotic-assisted spine surgery. The number of downloads from our website about all this is staggering, which means that people are paying attention. We're all on this journey together.
So
And
I'm curious, have you done anything with the ability of when they download that to then grab that data to create a depository of all the data that's being collected utilizing these best practices, or is that not possible?
Well, we haven't really done that, but I'll tell you the checklist for response to intraoperative neuromonitoring was the most cited paper in 2014 when it came out. So the thirst for this stuff is massive and real. And about once or twice a month, I'll get a call or an email or a letter from someone saying, I can't tell you how much this work helped me in my OR this week. So I think that's
That's got to be really validating.
because it's like the story of upstream. You know, these two
Yeah.
fishermen that are fishing and they see a baby in the water, and they jump in to pull the baby out, and then there's another baby. Now there's three. And instead of jumping in, the fisherman runs upstream. And the other fisherman said, where are you going? He said, I'm going to stop the person who's throwing in the babies. And that's sort of how I think about it. We need to get to medical harm way upstream, way before we're dealing with how to treat the infection or the complication. And that's what this meeting and that's what this foundation is really about.
Last year, I was at the conference. You actually told that upstream story. I remember it, and it's great. And I also love that you have taken that conference and evolved it into kind of a much more holistic way about how do we approach life. I love it. It's about safety in the OR, at least from my opinion, but it's also about how do we take care of ourselves, how do we become better people, better leaders, more inclusive, and I think all those things lead to better outcomes, as you've shown.
Yeah.
So
This year, a lot of the meeting is about the so-called second victim syndrome, burnout, which is a very real thing. And I think we have a lot of work to do to think about how we put our own oxygen on first so that we can be better at all the things that we want to do.
So with that, tell us about the book that you're writing.
Sharpening Your Scalpel is really a book that I'm working on with a friend of mine, Chris Ahmad, who wrote a book called Skill, and it's sort of 50 principles for getting better. But we spent lots of Monday mornings over a number of years now thinking about sort of three things: how to get in the room, so what are the skills necessary to just start this career, how to master the learning curve, and there's things that are learnable, teachable, ways to get better more quickly at everything that we do, and then how to exit with grace, and that's the part that I'm working on now. And just to sort of go back to a previous question, I'm interviewing surgeons about in their first week or two after they stop operating, and I say, what do you miss the most? And it's universal. They say, I miss two things. I miss the hugs and the smiles from the families, and I miss the camaraderie of that team that I developed over time. People never really miss the actual technical execution, and people who are honest say, honestly, it's been such a relief not to have the specter of high-pressure surgery over my shoulders at this point. So I think those are really important things to think about and be honest with each other about.
that's so fascinating. You and I have talked over the years about the commonalities, whether you're leading a team in the operating room or leading a team in corporate America. There are very similar principles. Actually, I just spent 2 days with my leaders at an offsite, and we dedicate time to team building and just kind of building that high trust, high performing team. And the people piece came up time and time again. And for me personally, those are just the richest moments of my career. It's the people, right? That you do the job and that's great and it's fulfilling, but people make or break the opportunity.
And I think there's some unfairness because I get the hug when I come out of the operating room and show the family the post-op x-ray, but I'm just the communicator, the last part of that team. So I actually take a very formal approach to team building. About once every 6 weeks, I'll meet with my entire team. I'll start my operating room late, and we talk about challenges in the OR, we talk about efficiency, we talk about things that we can be doing better, because ultimately everyone is building the cathedral. The person who's cleaning the room thinks that they're laying a brick or building a wall, but they're all part of that construction of the final product. And there is some unfairness because I get the direct hugs. So to the extent possible, I think our job as leaders is to share the big picture about what we are doing and what this team is driving to patients.
Yeah.
I think it's an excellent point. You know, it's the same across so many industries. I would tell you on the entrepreneurial side, you take a B product with an A team, you're going to take that all day. Obviously, you want an A product in an A team, but it's always about the people.
Yep.
Right? It's constantly about the people. Can you get them aligned? So whether you're in surgery and for years being in the OR and watching that, whether it's leading a large company, whether you're in a startup, no matter where you are, it's about the people and can they be in the boat rowing together in the same direction? And it comes from trust. And I believe that trust is earned, not given. Like people will fake, respect or to their managers or so forth until they get there, but it has to be earned over time. And that's got to be the same for you in the OR as a surgeon in that OR with everybody in that room with you to ensure your team is all pulling in the same direction.
Yeah, absolutely. It is trust learned over time. And at the same time, there are formal principles that can help people. We speak a lot at Spine Safety Summit about a process called the Comprehensive Unit Safety-Based Program, which is a formal team building program that allows teams to work better. I've done this in spine, but I've also done this in arthroplasty because I lead safety for my department. And when you apply these principles every single time, you get better outcomes, more efficient outcomes. So I think that we in medicine and surgery have a lot to learn from other organizations, and I spend a lot of time thinking about how other organizations are having the reliability that they have. Think about when you guys are making pedicle screws, or if you're doing something on a factory, you tolerate extremely low levels of defects.
Yep.
Really, every 100 times a human being touches a person, touches anything, he or she makes a mistake. So we need to get away from that 2 sigma level of human fallibility to the 6 sigma level of fallibility that only comes with teamwork, leveling hierarchy, culture, and systems.
Amazing. Shifting gears a bit, outside of work, obviously you're very driven, have a very successful career. We talk about this concept of type 2 fun all the time. I think you and I have even mentioned it, where a lot of things people choose to do in their personal time, maybe others don't see it as being fun on the surface. And I know you're a type 2 fun person, meaning it may not appear fun, but you get through these experiences, whether it's running marathons or tackling an aggressive ski hill, and it feels amazing because you're doing something aggressive and fun. So tell us a little bit about what you do outside of work when you're not busy doing what you do.
Well, I have 4 teenage boys, so these kids are wild kids, and so I do a lot of physical stuff with them.
Yep.
Most of them ski race, they're ski instructors. My wife teaches adaptive skiing to disabled kids. I've run, I just ran my 14th half marathon with one of your engineers. She beat me in the last 20 seconds. I'm so upset about it.
Congratulations, though. That's awesome.
We do lots of stuff together. But I think about those activities as ways of overlapping circles, because I think you need to overlap the things that you like to do for yourself, the things you like to do with your friends and family, in order to get maximum utility about the limited time that we have.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Kind of that concentric circle concept, right?
Concentric circle concept. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think about that as well in sort of the things I do outside the hospital. I own a number of restaurants, and that is really fun because it helps me think, as you say, about how businesses do things well. One of the restaurants was the 4th highest grossing restaurant in New York City last year. And that happens, just like you say, Eric, because they have good to great product, but what they really have is a ridiculous team that drives hospitality, meaning there's a customer-centric focus that certain industries do really well. There's a great book called Unreasonable Hospitality by Ken Guidera, who was co-owner of 11 Madison Park. And that's something in medicine we're still not doing as well as we can. you understand it when you're on the other side, when you're a patient or have a family member who's a patient. The amount of chaos and the amount of the pace of what we do often makes people feel generic or a cog in this healthcare system as a patient. So I think that it's important to focus on our responsibility also to drive hospitality, one-on-one touch, caring, empathy, and make sure that the customer, who's our patient, feels informed, acknowledged, respected, and cared for in the process. That's really one of the things I've learned from the restaurant industry.
So wait, you have a lot going on. You have the book, you have Safety and Spine, you have your own practice. I want to know more about the restaurants. Tell us more about the restaurants.
About 20 years ago, very early in practice, a friend of mine came up to me and said, this is an opportunity. We've always spoken about doing a restaurant. And I thought back and forth about it, and I said, well, I'll do it if you allow me to do 3 things. I said, first of all, I want to call it Spina because I'm a spine surgeon, so I want to call it Spina. So my first restaurant was an Italian place in East Village called Spina, where Blanca made every dish of pasta in front of you to order. It was an amazing restaurant. We got to top 100 wine list in New York City, but it didn't have the scale to really survive. What was about to happen in New York was an explosion in the real estate market, especially in that area. So some years later, through a patient connection, a patient that I operated on, they opened up an opportunity for me to get involved in a restaurant group. So there are a number of restaurants: Quality Bistro, Quality Italian, Bad Roman, Twin Tails, and now soon to come a new Mexican and a new Greek restaurant. That has been really fun to be involved with. And again, it's been fascinating to be a fly on the wall, because most of my involvement is passive, to see how they operate, decisions that they make, how they open restaurants differently than how they maintain them, where they flux economies to scale, because now we have several restaurants. We're able to deal with issues with inflation and COVID at scale, including manpower, and make decisions around purchasing that are just.
And the margins are so tight in that business that the need to be efficient and probably apply a lot of those processes that you talk about that are crossover.
Absolutely, this is business, hardcore business, but the principles of teamwork and strategic thinking are things that I continue to learn lots about and try to apply to my world.
So, any family recipes from Sicily in any of the restaurants? There has to be some. Come on.
I don't get to drive
No?
the menu at all. I get a vote, but that's about it. In our Greek restaurant, I have a couple things that I'm working on.
All right.
I think this has been fascinating. I love the cross-pollination of your business mind, your leadership mind, clearly a very skilled surgeon. So it's just fun to see how it all comes together. So I would just like to add our thanks for being on the show. It's been fantastic just to hear your story, and really just appreciate you being on the show today.
Well, I want to thank you guys for being partners in this journey. It is a journey, and it's a journey that you need teams, you need people on your side, and you need people with different skill sets from different perspectives that are supporting you, that are fostering what you're doing, that are trusting together with you and what you're doing. And you guys have been exactly that for a long time. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys.
Wonderful.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Back Talk.
And we want to thank Dr. Vitale for his hot takes on spine.
Cheers. Thank you,
Dr.
guys.
Vitale.
Cheers. That was great.
So much fun. Eric, this is fun. We are learning as we go here. We are a few episodes in to Back Talk.
Yep.
We're having some amazing conversations with phenomenal surgeons, and I think we're just learning as we go here. It's been really good, but why don't you remind people why we're doing this in the first place?
So I think this is so much fun. I remember way back there was a blogger, a spine blogger, and everybody was kind of wondering what was going on, and that person was anonymous and just talked about what's happening in the spine. And
Yep.
just this idea of having such a long career, both of us in spine, and pulling some information out to the market around what's going on and what's happening with doctors, their background. I think it's interesting. Hopefully over time we're going to have people from industry in here, engineers, salespeople, agents,
Other company leaders?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Venture capital, private equity.
Different
It'll be
perspectives,
fun.
patients. Yeah, I agree. And it's been nice to see. I have surgeons actually reaching out saying they'd like to join us on the podcast, which is fun.
And we do have to get Ed Ashami, since he really gave us the idea
Yes.
back at NAS.
That's true. He gets all the credit for this. So,
Yes, he
Dr.
does.
Ashami, you are the reason that we are doing this podcast. And we're
Shout
having
out.
a blast. Yes.
Yeah. So I got to ask you though, given the first couple, how many surgeons are we going to have where they were your first surgery you ever saw. So, I'm trying to understand. You keep saying this, so.
No, I said one of the first. One of the first.
Okay.
But really, in all fairness, I was the same trip. I went to New York City because I knew I could hit a lot of the heavy hitters all at once. So it was an amazing first exposure to spine. I was able to spend time in Hanjo Kim's OR, Dr. Vitale's OR. So yes.
I'm just kidding, of course.
Yes,
but
of course.
But it is funny. Yeah. So I think this is a lot of fun. For me, the idea of all these people that we know that are colleagues, just their perspective of how they got to where they are. We can learn from each of them. This last one we just did with Vitale about leadership, I thought was fantastic.
Yeah.
And that makes me think about the first panel you and I were ever on that we mentioned briefly during that.
It was 2018.
Yeah.
That was actually the very first panel I was ever on in spine. And I was very, very nervous because it was industry leaders, right? So I think it was you, it was me, it was Greg Lucier with Nuvasive, Brad Paddock, Stryker Spine. I'm trying to remember who else, but it was an amazing panel, and the whole topic was leadership. Team of teams. Stanley McChrystal, I think is his name, who he was on the panel with us as well. Dr. Lenke was facilitating, and I remember it was intimidating for me to be sitting up there with all these industry leaders, but we had a very robust conversation around leadership and just developing teams and the importance of connectivity and just followership and how that translates not only in industry but also in the OR. And I think Dr. Vitale has always shared that passion for leadership, and it's been fun to kind of compare and contrast different opportunities with him over the years and see what's there. But what do you remember about that panel?
So the book was great. I'd recommend people to download it, the audio version, or get the book Team of Teams. I thought it was fantastic.
Yep.
I do remember the panel. There was a picture when we started working together at Highridge that people said, hey, look at this from Safety and Spine.
Yep.
It was really funny, right? Because we didn't know each other at all.
No.
And you said that was your first panel?
My first panel.
How'd you do?
You tell me.
I think you did pretty well, obviously. Look at where you are now. So, as CEO of the most exciting spine company in the industry. We're a little biased.
If we do say so ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. So, but no, it's been a great run. And I do another shout out for Safety and Spine.
Yeah.
There were a lot of good meetings. That particular meeting's very interesting.
Yeah, it really is. It's so holistic and I think very progressive. Just the way he approaches all these topics and the way he weaves it all together, it's very, very compelling. I get a lot out of it.
One of the things I wanted to ask him that I didn't was he mentioned the lessons learned of the black box from failures.
Yeah.
And I always wonder if that's where we'll end up. I think probably not, at least in the near future. But will there be a point in time where we end up with that black box component in the OR where the OR is being monitored? And I don't know where that ends up over time, for safety and efficiency and process and so forth. I know people have been talking about that. It's very interesting from a surgeon perspective, legal liability perspective, a lot of different things. But, ultimately what he's doing in that space is very interesting. The other person who's doing that is Raj Sethi.
Correct. And actually they collaborate on this Safety and Spine. So you're right. He's also fantastic and another thought leader in the space that
we got to get him on.
Is thinking differently. Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, they're a great combo.
All right, so for Hot Takes in Spine for this episode, another very hot topic are tariffs.
Absolutely.
And all over the news, everyone has their own perspective on what this is going to mean. But I think what could be interesting is what does it mean for your business as a leader? How are you thinking about tariffs?
Yeah, it's definitely a hot topic. You're right. And something we think about every day. I think we're not alone in this, obviously. And there's only so much we can control. But part of running a business, as you know, is contingency planning. And almost these scenarios, you got to play them out and say, if this, then what? And I think the nice thing for us is, fortunately, most of our suppliers that we work with are based in the United States. So we have made the moves basically leading up to this we used to do quite a bit of production out of China. We were part of Zimmer Biomet. And as we spun out the spine business to ZimVie and then became Highridge, our operations team has been working diligently to move our supplier base out of China and into the United States. And so for the most part, we're pretty okay there. We do quite a bit out of France, actually.
So you mentioned France. I know your business does a lot of work there. It was from one of the acquisitions from back in, I think, 2016 with LDR.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about how the tariffs, how do you think about that related to France?
Yeah, great point. So yes, LDR was based in Troyes, France, and we still have a facility there just outside of Paris. And so the supply chain for those products is still primarily based in France. And that is where the tariff issue has been a bit of a headwind for us. Luckily, it's relatively minor compared to the impact it could have, and I think probably would have had several years ago before we started migrating our supplier base. But yeah, we do have a little bit that's still going on in France. So just kind of being aware of that, watching the tariff news on a daily basis. We've got a great operations team that's constantly assessing what could this mean, how do we mitigate this, where do we offset costs elsewhere to help cover this. So luckily for us, it has not been a massive issue, but we obviously are paying very close attention, and you can only control what you can control. So we'll just have to all kind of understand how this continues to evolve. I mean, what's your opinion on this? You've got a hot take on this as well, I believe.
That last comment you just made, I think is interesting. All the businesses I've always run, your comment of you can only control what you can control. In other words, the external forces, you have to operate within the system and do what you can do. And I think that was an insightful comment. So for me, it's particularly, I'm still active in the startup space.
Yep.
And as I was listening to the tariffs go through, on the news and people starting to talk about this, I was like, okay, it's interesting news. We'll see where it goes, what it does to the economy, impacting the large companies like yours and the very large companies. But then I realized even the small companies, depending on what it gets excluded or not, in my startup, I've got a situation where we assemble in the United States. So we're mostly U.S. based, but we have some external components. And as part of that, we had to go back and reassess, even in our startup where we're in the middle of raising capital and things like that. Hey, what could this mean if I have certain components that are from the OUS where we're talking about, 25, 26% tariffs, if not higher. Mm-hmm. So it does have an impact. But again, going back to what you said, control what you can control, go back into the P&L or the spreadsheet or the financial model and see, how we can play this out. So we'll get through this like we do, I think, in our industry often. But it's going to be interesting to see where it plays out, obviously.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think I've just learned over the years, I'm guessing you have a similar experience. Things like this would have really rattled me 15, 20 years ago. And I've just learned it's going to work out. And to your point, you just got to look elsewhere to, I cannot control tariffs, I cannot control what's going on. But I can control other parts of my business and work together with my leadership team to say, how do we anticipate this? What do we do to stay ahead of it? I think understanding kind of these dynamic forces that are always changing in business and in life, yep. And then understanding how to navigate it most effectively, it just gives my leadership team a sense of control to understand that, okay, we can't control these external forces, but we can control how we behave inside of it. So it'll be interesting to watch.
And I think that ties to leadership. When I listen to you say that, and I think about Vitale talking about leadership, and I think about what we have to do, whether it's in our personal life or in business, you got to look at challenges and say, how do I address these and move forward? So in other words, you can't focus on the things you can't control. And yep. You can't focus on if it's going to go badly, and if so, what's going to happen. You say, okay, let me take this, let me assess it, let me look at what all my alternatives are and move forward. And that you don't want blind optimism, but you want an approach in your business that is, okay, I will find a way through this.
Yeah.
Because if you get caught up too much in the problems, then you never get to the resolution and move forward. So you got to continuously move forward. I only say that because I've seen that happen in business over and over again, where people can get caught up so much in some of the things they can't control. So I think it's interesting. We'll see where we end up. But I finished that whole segment with saying it comes down to you deal with the environment and continue to move forward.
Yeah, and I totally agree with all that. We have a part of our credo at Highridge is relentless grit. And what you're talking about, I think, is perseverance and grit. And that's how people get through stuff. Yep. So, yeah, all very interesting.
Very.